Hello and welcome to Scilence, a podcast where women get really honest about surviving and thriving in what often feels like a man's world. My guests are wonder women from the fields of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM, where inclusivity and diversity can be a real problem. I know this only too well as a female Southeast Asian mechanical engineer. I was kind of a minority within a minority back then. I'm Dr. Shanice O'Mara, an engineer turned broadcaster. Throughout my career, I've worked on and reported on some cutting-edge technology and innovation. And through my TV work, I've met some incredibly inspiring women from a diverse range of STEM fields. Talking to these exceptional ladies has often left me feeling empowered, hopeful, and excited about life. I believe Scilence will enrich you too. Every week, a woman in STEM shares her unique experiences with absolutely no pressure in having to promote her accomplishments or guard her impressive reputation. Because I've come to realise that everyone is just way more open and relaxed when they're anonymous. So I deliberately disguise my guest voices so that we're just connecting as human beings rather than human doings. It's my hope that you really relate to what we chat about today. If so, please do subscribe to Scilence and maybe even rate and review the show. I'd love to have your feedback. This week, my guest is in the field of computer engineering. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be back for a new year of work and doing all the things that I love doing. How about you? How's life in the world of computer engineering?
Well, it's exciting, right? 2020, when you think of the year, I thought it was just something I've seen Star Trek. So now that we are actually living it, and many of the predictions from Star Trek are probably true and old-fashioned already, it's very exciting to be in a period where computers are really leading the way, and we probably have to find ways to stop where they are going now.
Yeah. I mean, have you been in your career for long?
I have been in my career for over 20 years now, almost 20 years.
Gosh, you must have seen a lot of change.
A lot of change. I think it's been an exciting journey, even from the conversations that we look at. I look at a number of industries and how technology has transformed the way they work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been quite interesting to see how the ways of working have changed. The business transformation is at a different level. The conversations that I have 10 years ago seem like such a joke now.
What kind of conversations?
So let's say if you take, 2000, the whole industry IT revolution started because of the Y2K period, right? And now you're talking, the conversations we have is on a different league, how you're transforming an industry using AI.
Yeah.
How you're looking at jobs, not only to make them efficient, lean, no, how you're going to do it differently. What tasks can be taken over by artificial intelligence? What can be automated? So there is a lot. It's a very it is a scary zone right now, I'd like to say, because we are at a period where we don't know what tomorrow definitely looks like, and what we were very comfortable with, jobs, types of work that people did in every organization. Take media, take telecoms, where of course another industry which has converged completely. I remember walking into music companies a few years ago in 2004, 2005, and they had a very different language.
Yeah.
And then now there's a world of Spotify.
Yeah.
The stars don't exist. The way they used to work doesn't exist. It's a whole new working model.
Yeah, it's the same with television and print media.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't really read newspapers anymore. And, people watch television mostly on their phones and have a much shorter attention span or even time to consume video. So things have really, really changed.
No, totally. And the fake news. And then you have a problem with it. There's so much to read now that you can't really, it's difficult for a common person to know what's really real and what's not. And we are really at the driver's seat of curating every part of our experience. In the olden days, like
Yeah.
you said, for print, there were some very good dailies, and we would really read them. They would define the spirit, the momentum of the country, the political scene. But now,
Mhm.
depending on what we've read today, we are literally curating what we're going to read for the next few days. And it's really difficult. It's very important that we manage each step. And then social media is another level. Just
Yeah.
reading somewhere that students and kids have to, um, and especially young girls, are really getting depressed or mentally disturbed by social media. And there was the front page news today I read was about a suicide of a very young girl, and the parents blame it on the some
Pressure.
yeah, the pressure and what social media, the need for them to share data of how students, and actually, it is a minefield. We did not have all this, and none of us really know how to handle it. There is no right way. There's no Bible, or there's no best way of working with these things. And I think the next few years, I'm hoping, will define how we make technology fit in our life and not let technology take over our life.
Mm. Well, technology seems to have been your life. How have you coped with the ever-changing landscape of the field that you're in?
I think that's the really interesting part. For as a person, I think I thrive in change. So for me, it worked really well.
Mm.
And I think it's all it's given. Every moment is new. It's real challenges, and it's also easy. At the end of the day, technology has made our life easier and has made my customers' lives easier.
Mm.
So the story is obviously very positive. If you do this, if you transform your company digitally, you can save money, you can save jobs, you can reach out to a better audience, you can meet better people, you can deliver better products. So the story is about betterment. It's
Mm.
about
It's not all doom and gloom.
efficient. Yeah, exactly. It's not right. You look at the electric cars at every level that we've got technology involved. It's
Mm.
been a good story. Um, and only now there is some, and of course, you have to balance the story out. But if you look from a business perspective, um, you're definitely increasing your reach. Your methods are changing. The best statement, if you look at the advertising industry about 25 years ago or 20 years ago, when we were just doing, from a marketing perspective, we'd say, I don't know what 80% of my
Now you know
advertising, how
exactly
that is
how and
consumed.
where and
And
for how long.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're talking about mass personalization. You can, and that was unimaginable.
Yeah.
20, 15 years ago, it was unimaginable. And look at the granularity we work with, every habit we track.
Yeah. What made you go into computer engineering in the first place?
Um, I thought of all the engineering. I would have loved to be in mechanical engineer because I thought I loved cars. It's a different thing that I don't drive on now,
Mm.
but yeah, I thought that would be a nice thing, build those products. But computer was the shiny new thing at that point. And you won't believe it, when I did my engineering, I did it in an all girls engineering college.
Oh, really? How many of you?
Oh, I think that.
I asked because I couldn't imagine that there were enough to make a
No,
class.
and the joke in the engineering circles used to be, where it used to be a co-ed environment, that there are only two types of people. There are males and non-males, because there were hardly any females. They were very tomboyish who
Yeah.
went into the co-ed environment, and then suddenly,
Yeah.
despite all odds, I've grown up in a whole co-ed environment. All my schooling was co-ed, and then suddenly I'm doing this very male-dominated course, and I have only women around me. And there were many. I think we were a batch. So my college is very well known, and we were among the, I think, the first five batches. So not, it wasn't that old, 5 or 6 batches, and then it was about my class was 100, And I think the overall
100 women.
100 women, yeah. My year group for
Gosh.
computers was 100 women, and then we had electronics and instrumentation, and now we've expanded that faculty to have many other courses, and we shared
Mm.
campus with an architecture college, all women. And you can
Wow.
imagine we were a good hold of 500 to 500 plus women in this very male dominated field. So it was very exciting. I think
Gosh, that's so encouraging. But that means you would have had a radically different experience to what I had, for example, where in my class, mechanical engineering course, there are 139 of us altogether, and 8 of us were girls or something. And it made such a difference that we were such a minority, and also being, ethnic minority, studying in the UK, we were literally a minority within a minority, or I was a minority within a minority. But what must it have been like for you being a woman in an all female
so.
school?
I did it differently, right? So we were. So I've been in a co-ed environment all along. So when I came for this engineering college, it was unheard of. I never knew you could get so many women, and
Yeah.
every time in school, also our balance was the same. 20 boys, 4 girls. It would be. So I was used to that
Mm.
environment because then I chose science for my A levels and GCSE equivalent, and that pyramid was anyway becoming very light on the women front. And then suddenly, when there were so many women, it taught me three things, and they have stayed with me forever. And even till date, that's a place I go in my mind, and I get a lot of inspiration, and I would give it to all the girls because in that environment, there were no stereotypes. I had to do everything, and I
Yeah.
was one of those girls who would love to, who would love to feel like a princess. So I would, in my co-ed environment, I'd have, I thought, if you
Mm.
could smile, you could get your, we had to do metallurgy and we had to do blacksmithing and all those really hardcore, very tough courses in the first year, which really involved a lot of physical strength as well. And I thought, oh my God, there's no easy way. I've got to do it. Smart.
Yeah,
It's
the
gonna work.
female
Yeah,
charm is not
I've
going to
just
work.
everybody around me was in the same boat, or some was smaller. But yeah, that taught me that yeah, together we are a great force. Um, we could do anything.
Mm.
So there is unity, yeah, because I do one of the themes I work a lot in the whole women in business, women in science, and women in leadership. And I always feel that we don't encourage each other that much. And that is
Mm.
there, and
Yeah.
I think that's an inherent thing, but that's also because of the way uh, the society has led on to that. Okay, they compare us quite easily, and which is why the whole social media aspect,
Yeah.
linking back to that, women get more affected, girls
Mm.
get more affected by comparison, and I don't know why.
Yeah, well, there's so few opportunities for women. I mean, particularly in STEM. I mean, there are just so few places for women in STEM fields, so it can get really competitive. And so, rather than uniting, often women see each other as a threat to their own ambitions.
Yes, I think that's a really nice way. That's a good point because I didn't think of it that way. That maybe because there's such few opportunity, we feel that we need to prove ourselves a lot more. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that could be one. Yes, but yeah, and my experience just taught me that when there is a purpose and when we are working towards a goal, we are a pretty good team.
Yeah. And so I guess then the environment at school, your engineering school, was very much one of all the women getting stuck in and really kind of not holding back on what they're capable of.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to go with it, right?
Mm.
I had my friends used to drive bikes, and I mean, there was nothing that the girls didn't do.
Yeah.
They would do motorbikes, they'd race, and I think that was exhilarating. I all your life you hear girls don't do this, and then you get put into an environment where we are actually every minute doing what people thought we could
Mm.
do. And I think uh, that's probably I. You were in a girls' school, and I find how was it similar to that? Like, did you when you studied? What is your experience in the schooling years? Does that come into play or not really?
So I've had such a strange journey through education because I was bullied quite a lot for being ethnic minority and also being one of very few girls in my primary school. And then secondary school, I went to all girls for A levels. And then when I was in university, it was pretty much all boys again. So I've really had like all experiences. And I think because the experiences were so varied, I really ended up feeling very lost. I just didn't know how to stand up for myself. And I guess that's why I have such a passion to help other women today to stand up for themselves, particularly within STEM. I've heard before from another podcast guest that going to a single sex school was the best thing for her because you're right, there were no stereotypes. So everyone just did everything and they didn't hold back. They didn't think, oh, we'll save that for the boys. They didn't sort of develop that charm offensive because it just wasn't going to get you anywhere in a single sex school. And so it's fascinating to hear everybody's experiences because, even if two women had the same education and same educational circumstances, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would experience it the same way. So for me, when I was in mechanical engineering surrounded by a lot of men, I found it really refreshing. I found it extremely focused because my education before that was with all girls. And I found it to be kind of like very emotion driven, a bit sort of like all over the place. Whereas men, in my experience, have more of an ability to just be purely rational. So, I think you can get the best out of all situations, but sometimes situations get the better of a person. So it's interesting to see that you had a positive experience.
Yes, I like you said, I'm sure um, there are pros and cons to each of those areas. But yeah, but for me, I thought what I learned from it was the positives of it. I thought the
Mm.
fact that there were no stereotypes and we've got to do everything, and we did everything on our own. It gave me confidence that really, the world's your oyster. You can do what you set your heart to, and that was my engineering really. I think that really set the foundation for engineering for me.
Mm. And why did you even decide to go into STEM in the first place? Like, were you particularly gifted at it?
Yeah, I enjoyed science. I was good at it. I was smart. My teachers thought I was really good. I thought I wanted to do something more. Um, uh, I could have done something in history and art as a historian or something like that. But I think I was very logical, and I wanted
Mm.
to. Um, so it wasn't something that I was really making things as a natural engineer, but I was very logical. I liked the whole
Mm.
logic behind things. I
Yeah.
liked the fact that you could do something new, create something of your own. Even when I thought about chemistry, the other option I had in my mind was chemical engineering. And really, the use case that drove me to think about that was perfumes. I'd love to know what goes behind it. So it was
Really?
always coming, they say that for me, um, it was using engineering to touch a very women-centric world. I
Yeah.
like that. I thought, you can't have engineers designing for women without having any of our influence, right? So, that's where my
Yeah.
thinking was. It was always, I was always testing the norm, and I was always wanting to do something slightly different. And I thought computers gave the right foundation. And I've stayed in the
Yeah.
industry, but I've always looked at solutions that my that engineering or computers or technology could provide to business. So that has always been my strength, to be able to understand the implications, um, or understand a problem, and then try and find the right solution for it. And technology really is at the heart of many solutions these days, so it puts me in the right place.
Yeah. It sounds like it's given you a tremendous amount of self-esteem being in this STEM world. Is that true?
Yeah, I think I didn't think I was lacking it, but but yeah, it's a strength. I think it gives you a rational confidence, right? Things
Yeah.
can happen. Anything you want to do can be done, and there's no practical way then looking at science for it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, today industries appreciate what bring what women bring to the table more than ever. And there's such a push towards inclusivity and diversity within the science fields. But for a long time, and even now, the stereotypes have really held women back. Um, have you seen a change over your career as to how women are viewed within STEM?
You know, I have the privilege of working with a significant number of women in tech, in the industry that I work in and in the company that I am. And I've seen, hundreds and thousands. That's the number we're talking about. But what I see lacking is, we get to a level, and you're talking all my career, and all my schooling. I've always seen that girls have performed better in grades in comparison. There's hands down more sincerity, more willingness. But I have seen, when women hit milestones,
Yeah.
like
Mm.
having a baby, which is probably the biggest milestone that they hit. I don't think marriage changes that much if they have a good partner, and I think vice versa for the partner as well. But uh, having kids, etc., I
Mm.
feel it's a little bit of a, um, we are not catering for them to then come back in, and that's where the stereotype just holds back. I remember that I was interviewing a person to hire on the team, and I asked somebody to give me a feedback,
Mm. Yeah.
and you won't believe that that person said she's good, but she has kids, so she'll go home early. And I was just thinking that, I'm definitely, if that is the feedback you've given me, then I'm definitely hiring her. And
Mm.
looking back, she was one of my best hires, because she was the first one in the office and she would deliver. When she was there, she was so focused that, so these stupid stereotypes keep coming up. And I'm like, really? But they are my
Mm.
best performers. I have history, I've seen them, I've done it. Can you say the contrary to the contrary? Can you prove the opposite? But so, yes, I see those milestones, um, for everyone, where and unfortunately, I don't think, as a society, it's not individual companies, but as a society, um, we're giving an equal space to it. It's a lot of subtle changes. I see a lot of companies that have women's network, and if you go into the women's network, we talk about issues that are
Mm.
very siloed towards us. Childcare, or family, whatever, we are constantly juggling for that work life balance. But you don't see those same conversations coming from men. And once one of a very famous CEO, I know you keep things anonymous, so I'll keep it that way. But I was attending one of her conferences, and she was asked by a journalist after the whole interview went really well, and in the interview, the journalist asked her, "And how do you do it all?" And I love her reply. She said, "Did you ask the CEO just before me the same question?"
Ooh.
And I thought, yeah, because I don't want to be asked that question. I don't want to be siloed.
Mm.
I'm doing the job, and at that point, when I'm doing the job, that's what you want to measure me on.
Yeah.
In the background, yes. So we help women create that balance field, and that's when, oh, and that's another subject where you have to, subtly change the dynamics of the society.
Mm.
But it cannot be through siloed networks of women, because we'll never match it. We don't have the capacity, time to nurture another relationship and then create a work life balance around it.
Yeah. It's such a big problem. I don't understand why it takes two people to create a child, and yet once that child has been created, it seems to become purely the responsibility of the mother to be there with her time. And it's
Yeah,
that kind of backward thinking is deeply ingrained in our societal thinking.
and it's across societies. And having said that, I have a very, very amazing partner, and we work together towards everything. I don't think any woman can come to work if she doesn't have the right support behind her. And the
Mm.
ones who are hats off to them. But it's a family that works together, and men are at an individual level. You can see some are doing more than the others, and some are
Mm.
far beyond that curve. uh,
Yeah.
but that but that change has to come. If a man takes a parental leave, it's not taken that well even in his organization.
Yeah.
So we have to. It's really a minefield to see. Um, it has to be done subtly. It will take time. But maybe our daughters are going to grow up feeling that there was no stereotype.
Mm.
And when we get to that stage where we haven't been telling our sons that boys do this and girls don't do this, and hopefully, I think we are creating that world now where we're getting very
Yeah.
gender neutral. um, and I think it sits in that fact. I grew up as one
Oh,
of three
really?
sisters, and my father never told us we are girls or we couldn't do something. And I think that was at the cornerstone or the foundation for the ambition, for the desire, for the attitude. And that stems on. If we are not inculcating that at the right age between
Mm.
young girls and boys, it's not going to permeate in society.
I mean, do you think your dad had very time? Because um, my dad, I think, was pretty open-minded about having three daughters. But there was still this air of, the man runs the house and the man is head of the family.
So yes, I think my dad was a very is a very strong personality, and he definitely ran the house. But my mom was a very silent, strong-willed person. I think it was a great story to see how both of them created a wonderful partnership, where my mom brought all the calmness, the silence, the positivity, the spirit, the attitude. My dad brought the drive, the ambition, the energy, and I think that's literally the balance that's required. But and although you're right that I did see a man was leading it, but my dad
Mm.
was very respectful of the position that my mom had, and for us
Mm.
as well, he made sure. I remember from a very young age, my dad would make us read articles about women CEOs, women pilots, women civil officers, and we meet lots of these ambitious, lovely women in banking, um, um, in every field. So for us, that exposure was very early on. We had little role models every part of our life, to look up to
Mm.
them. And starting with my mother, although she was a homemaker, but it was her strength that built everything, and her girls.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't know about your experience, but in my generation, I think my dad was extremely open minded about the roles women could take. I mean, he's an engineer himself, and all three of his daughters went into STEM subjects. So obviously influenced by him, but I think it requires another generation after ours to know how to stand up for oneself. So there's standing up for oneself and being a strong woman, but there's also the next level, which is feeling comfortable and at ease of standing up for oneself. Because I think that certainly seems to have skipped my generation. I feel like I was very uncomfortable standing up for myself. I still did it, but I was very uncomfortable throughout the whole process.
No, you're right. And that's what I was saying. That maybe our daughters, or maybe
Yeah.
hopefully our daughters, or maybe the generation after, they will not grow up with any stereotype. We don't
Mm,
use it in our house. Hopefully, the schools don't use it much, and there are more and more role models for them to look at, so that they'll feel comfortable. It's the norm. It's natural. Because it's not natural for me, and it's not natural for you even now. For us, it isn't.
mm,
We still have. Um, I still sit there and think, how can you have gender pay parity? I mean,
mm.
how? And it exists.
Yeah, it's getting there.
So it, it's getting
Mm,
there exactly, but it
mm,
still exists, and you just have to kind of stay. You There are so many times where I've seen for promotions within a corporate structure that a man just almost entitles himself to it, and a woman always just thinks, oh, is she good
yeah.
enough? And I'm like, oh my god. When I'm interviewing people, or when I'm doing an appraisal conversation, and I'm going, do you know you work so hard, and everybody sees how hard you're working, but you're the one not championing yourself. And I remember, in contrary, I had a male, a guy, a man come for the same appraisal. They had the same job over the year, and you could see they both knew that there's stark difference in the delivery, but the confidence with which the boy sold himself, I was like, really? Or some your work definitely takes you places, but you have to be vocalist. You have to be your own champion as well, and I
Of
think
being
that's
our own
another thing
champion.
we lack a bit.
And have you always
Yeah.
been your own champion, or is it as a result of moving into a more senior authoritative position as a woman in tech that has taught you those skills?
Oh, I think I've made many mistakes. I. It's only now, in hindsight, that I realize that I could have championed myself better.
Mm,
And in some cases, I have probably been able to champion myself. And I've been lucky. I've met some really nice mentors along the way.
mm.
And look, I put it to luck. I don't put it to hard work. So that's where my championship goes, right? But no, I think no, I'm not there at all. I would like to champion myself a lot more. I would
What's holding you back from championing yourself?
Because it's not natural, right? It doesn't come naturally to you. We are used to, uh, as women, we've had that a little bit of, now, not so much. Now I'm probably a little more cognizant of the fact that, no, this is what you've got to say, and I'm getting more in the skin.
Mm,
In the initial years, yes, I entered back in a very man centric world. You miss out the coffee conversations. You're not doing the sales drinks every evening. Um, More when you get into the kids zone, you start missing out those a lot more. As a young individual, you were still there. Um, now I also come from an ethnic minority, but my working life has all been in this in UK. So I've had all those barriers as well to
Mm.
juggle with. So it's always been those challenges, and you don't fit in immediately into the environment. Firstly, girl in a man's world, then you come from an ethnic minority. Then you're missing out the gossip. You're missing out the right stories. You may not find them out. You don't become and having said that, I'm very sales centric. I'm a very people person. So I think it's you know it's a balance, but of course it can be done a lot better.
Mm. Yeah, I've often talked to guests on my show that say if only they knew now what they knew when they were first starting out in a STEM world, like things would be very different. And it's just things like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not have the right answers or to find something confusing. And I remember myself as a younger STEM person, I was always so scared of getting the answer wrong and my peers seeing that. And I think I still struggle with that today, where I just always want to come across as knowledgeable and capable. And my need for that actually disempowers me.
I totally agree with you, and I share that sentiment. To be able to know everything, but as I'm climbing, where I am right now, and as I meet more senior people, also, I think when you're starting, you feel the people above you know everything, and they're more knowledgeable, and they know. When you're at this level, you're like, oh my god,
Mm.
we know so little, and that and that realization that as you grow higher, your knowledge actually keeps reducing because you have to keep expanding it. That
Yeah.
whole learning in every aspect, learning in the people you meet, learning in the things you do, learning real courses, and just the emotional intelligence of that period is so critical. So now when I'm sitting and having conversation with my colleagues, finding answers to problems, we are all exploring, and as you go higher, you realize nobody knows what's right or wrong. We are all working with intuition. We are
Mm.
all trying to use the best of what we know. And yes, the more we try to do
Mm.
something, and if we are happy to fail, we'll probably reach there faster because we would have tried a lot more things. And that again uh, is a mindset that doesn't come inherently to everyone, and not to our generation.
Yeah. And in listening to you, I'm realizing that actually we need to have a really strong sense that we bring something useful to the table. Because I think women often feel like, well, women may doubt what they bring to the table, particularly after having children, because they think, oh, well, you know, I probably don't know as much as someone that can study all day, um, or can really be focused on their job rather than be distracted by their family. And it's more like an internal conversation rather than reality. Because as you said with the colleague that you eventually hired, people bring skills to the table, but it's almost like those individuals need to appreciate what skills they're bringing to the table. They have to know it themselves.
Yeah, it's just that the skills are you're right. It's just that knowledge of acknowledging the fact that you can do it. And
Yeah.
if Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In puts it really nicely in her book, where she says, they both, her brother and they were both studying for a same exam, and the brother really didn't work hard, and she and her friend really slogged, and they all gave the exam. The brother comes out and said, I
Mm.
aced it. And Sheryl Sandberg and her friend said, oh, I think it
Mm.
was okay. When the results came, the girls definitely did
Mm.
better. But the guy is confident. He did okay. He didn't do bad at all, but his confidence
Yeah,
was a lot more,
I
right?
really do wonder whether.
And that's what happens in the business world. Imagine you have to publish a report, and you two people have to submit the same report. The person, if the girl goes and says, I think I've done well, it's got everything, but there may be something. And the boy would just come and say, I've done a great job, it's perfect. I think we found a lot of. It's just the same, it's because really the messenger on the other side, the person on the other side, as we go higher, doesn't have the bandwidth to
Mm.
clean the noise, right? Sometimes they just put the vibe in the room. And we have to be very mindful of not having
Yeah.
this self-doubt vibe when we are presenting. To be very like, no, I think I've done a great job, it's good. And somehow that is not inherent in a lot of girls and a lot of high performers like Arzi, like you mentioned, and people I've met, um, and they are significantly high performing girls that I'm talking about. So it's just us, right? And I'd love to
Yeah.
know what that silver bullet is, and I would love to give it to my daughters as well, so that at least they come out shining out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels almost biological. It doesn't feel like we choose to have this mindset of self-doubt. And it seems to be a necessary tool for advancement, but yet it causes so much kind of suffering and just distress and anxiety to always be questioning oneself. And I'd love to be able to get rid of it if I could. Um, but it can be a real clash with men because when you're in a period of self doubt and men, let's just say, hear you in that spiral of self doubt, it makes them question us as well. So,
Exactly. And that is where we need to be a little more sharp and focused, to not let it's back to that championship point. You either
mm,
champion yourself or you let the self doubt take over. Because if you're not saying the right thing to ourselves, then obviously the audience is not hearing the right thing from us.
mm, yeah, gosh, I mean, it's one task to try not to engage in the continuous self doubt, but it's also another task to hide the self doubt if you are in self doubt. Try not to share it with people because it then just makes other people doubt you. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like one of my biggest ambitions is to live authentically and to just be myself in front of people. But, part of being oneself is to be very honest about your shortcomings and your sort of your weaknesses. But we live in a world and a society where you really have to put your weaknesses to one side and, kind of sweep them under the carpet so that no one else sees them.
Yeah. Yeah, but being that authentic lifestyle or the authentic life or the authentic you is such a powerful statement. And
Mm,
if you look at any of the ancient scriptures, it's all about that whole mindfulness, getting to that power of you
mm,
and centering you in your own
mm,
skin. Um, I really believe in that. I think but it's a
mm,
journey. We all, unfortunately, have to go through that journey to come to that
mm,
realization. Um, and I think it sometimes it's also our strength because the effort that we put in is significant, and maybe the results are better. And I think in a stream like science, or where you come to scientists and research, a personality like that, where you continuously try and challenge yourself, you have that self doubt, you try and do it again, you get it right. In medicine, now that's such a
Yeah.
it is almost
Mm.
a prerequisite
Yeah.
to be good at something in that format, right? On the other spectrum of sales, you can take my drift there, where you have to show the confidence in the room, because otherwise, if
Mm.
you have self doubt,
Yeah.
people are not going to buy what you're saying. So it's that spectrum. It's those careers. It's those. But if you just look, even in these, we probably need to know when to switch on that spirit of not self doubt but self challenge. I wouldn't call it self doubt. I'll call it self challenge, because it's more positive. It's
Mm.
more like, we can do better. I need to do this better. I think it can go further. And that probably some professions really, and most professions would uh, would benefit from something like that. Would benefit from that, the self challenge that an individual brings to the table, and you have to be in that sphere of self challenge, self comparison. You have to compare yourself to only your next best self. And that takes away the whole social media aspect as well. Don't look at someone else, just compare yourself. Are you better than what you were yesterday and what you are doing today? You're in the
Mm.
right
Yeah.
track.
Oh, I love that.
And that brings you closer to your authentic you. And that's the journey individuals have to make, and women have to make for themselves. Um, and hopefully, we'll get to that balance. We hopefully we'll get that balance right.
Yeah. Speaking of the journey, the long journey of self realization, how has it been? You mentioned your daughters, fitting motherhood into a career that is very male dominated.
That's my self challenge. That's where the motivation, the self motivation comes from. To see my girls, see somebody who's been in this environment, and hopefully they would see me as somebody who's comfortable in that skin. My
Mm.
older daughter, she's only 6, and she's really very encouraged by the fact that her mother's an engineer. And she says she wants to be an engineer, and she wants to create things, and she's more creative, and that whole journey. So if I can encourage her, and that's probably one of the reasons why after my first child, I had the option of not going back. And
Mm.
very early on, within the first 6 weeks, I think I knew I would be going back. I'm not somebody who would not go back, so that obviously was off the question. But go back to work,
Mm.
or work in some capacity. And then, it just became something that if we don't set the right examples, uh, who will?
Mm.
And I think my daughters are also my biggest strength. The family is the biggest strength. They work around it. My husband, my daughters, we work together as a great team. My younger one is still very young. She's only one, but it's
Oh, wow.
just it fits everything together.
Mm. How did you even know when to fit motherhood into your career? Because women study and men study for so long to be qualified enough to get their dream jobs. And then once you get into your dream job, you have to work again to to progress. When did you know it was the right time to then have children?
Do you have kids?
I mean, I actually don't have kids because I've never known when to fit it in.
You will never know when to fit it in. You will never know what
Mm.
it is to be a mother and to be responsible. I think there's no Bible that says it, and that's where it's literally a joke, that it's such an important milestone in anyone's life, man, woman,
Mm.
wherever. And nobody tells you how to do it right. There
Mm.
is no manual that tells you how to deal with a child, how to bring up a child. There are many parenting things coming up now, but the minute you hold your baby, you are someone else. And
Mm.
that transformation, uh, you are literally born on the day your baby is born, and you are a different woman from that minute on. You have more perspective, you have better perspective. In some cases, it makes you more emotional, some cases, it makes you more stronger. You'll deal with it at your own time. Um, yeah, if you ask me in my personal journey, my daughters are 5 years apart. I think it was good for me right now. Sometimes I feel I could have had them one after the other. I definitely wanted more than one because there was no point in getting one and not having a sibling, because I've grown up with a great sisterhood, a sister bond that I have, and it's my strength too. So I definitely wanted my daughters to have it. Luckily, I have two daughters, so that works. Um, and really, I don't think I knew it till I held my baby in my hand, and even then, I didn't know if I have the right qualifications to be a mother. And yeah, and it's a wonderful journey of something called guilt that you'll have 24/7, that you're never a great mother, and that's another thing you live with. But yeah, that's a self challenge. You every day want to make sure that you're waking up to be the best mother for your daughters, for your family, for your kids. And it puts everything in perspective. It puts a lot of things in perspective. At work, I think before my daughters, I'd take a lot more. I would get stressed about a lot of things at work. Um, but it's not that I'm more driven right now, as compared to when they were, because my time is also limited. It needs to be balanced right. So the drive, the ambition is still strong, but your perspective is more holistic. It's more,
Right.
uh, you know,
And that's what corporates seem to fear about women having children, that they just get more life context, and that seems to make them less ambitious. Although in all the women that describe this switch that they've experienced, they seem to just get more focused.
yeah, I think it's not less ambition at all. It's more focus. I think a woman who's coming back to work after having a baby, do not challenge her ambition, because that's pretty much at its peak at that point. She has
Yeah.
made a conscious decision that she is coming to somewhere, um, where she has to hit hard, because she has to make sure that it counts. Her
Yeah.
minute at work counts, her minute at home counts. Uh, and it's refreshing. It's really refreshing. I think it's my inner strength. Being a mother is your superwoman strength. You, if you're there, you're working towards it. It's you have to may play to your strength. And I think it's someone just I was just talking to somebody, and I said, how do you feel becoming, and it was a I said, how do you feel becoming a dad? And he said something. He said, that's the only selfless thing we end up doing in our
Oh
whole
gosh, yeah.
life. uh, it's probably the most rewarding thing. And I'm like, exactly, and that came from a man who's very, I'm sure, equally delivering his hours at work and at home in the right spirit. So, and that's how you look at it, because we talk about charity, we talk about everything, but it's that selfless attachment to someone. You hold your child, you will never know that you love someone so much. Uh, so all those feelings, that's behind what a superwoman or a super person is made of, to handle all those feelings and make your determination more focused, more sharp. uh, and you have another reason, you have another reason to do well, you have another reason to make it count. um, and unfortunately, yeah, so that's my thinking around it.
In listening to you, you sound like an absolute superwoman. Do you think you have it all?
I don't think anyone can have it all. It's a scary thought to have it all, but yeah, I think I have a good balance of it all. Uh,
Yeah, because there are so many aspects to being a woman. There's motherhood. There's being the woman, the an individual in your own right, and then there's the woman that has a career. I mean, you seem to have those plates spinning in every single department.
Yeah, I think, like I said initially, that I am the kind of person who thrives in that change, the continuous change that life brings to you. So I'm most comfortable when it's all spinning. So, and I like it that way. I think, of course, I've been fortunate in terms of the fact that I have the right ecosystem around me, the right
Mm.
opportunities I've been able to look at, and touch wood, the spirit is strong, the ambition is there, and the ambition comes not only in profession, it comes in the personal life too. So as long as we are
Mm.
able to juggle, there are some good days, some bad days, but all in all, it's that positive championing that gets everyone going.
So, do you reckon that has been the key to having it all? Because everyone has different forms of luck and different destinies, but for you, what has been the key characteristics in obtaining and maintaining having it all?
So, as a person, I think I'm never, as my husband would joke with me, that I'm never satisfied, and I tell him that's my strength. I'm always hungry for more, and that's what drives me.
Mm.
And in that spirit, um, I don't know what all would be, because my all is a continuous goal. It's ever changing, and
Mm.
it's
Growing.
the the want to do more, the want to do better. More than more, it's better. It's it's varied. It's extensive. It's versatile. All those aspects. With my children, with for my family, do more, do right, do better,
Mm.
and that ambition be, more quality time. It could be in any aspect,
Mm.
but but that's my drive. So I am not somebody who would sit and say, yeah, it's all going well. There can always be something
Mm.
better, but I enjoy it. And there's that, and I call it my positive spin, because that's why I wake up, because you can always make the next day better.
What a beautiful note to end on. It's just been so inspiring listening to your words and hearing about your life. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoy listening to you and looking at all your work. So you are an inspiration in yourself,
Oh,
which is amazing.
thank
So
you.
happy to have connected with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. That's it from my STEM guest this week. Gosh, well, she said it right there. It couldn't be any clearer. What's really driving her is this need to keep bettering herself and keep improving and just being the best version of herself each and every day. But for me, what was so key in listening to her was that, as well as striving for more, she's also enjoying every step of the way. Thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget to rate and review the show, and catch you next week on Scilence.